Hello, everyone. I know that people are still joining us, but I just want to welcome you all and thank you all for attending today for this Balancing Work and Cancer webinar. My name is Nicole Jarvis. I'm a Senior Manager of Programs at Cancer and Careers, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. Just before we begin, a few housekeeping items related to accreditation. Today's webinar is accredited for CEUs by ANCC, NASW, the New York State Education Department State Board for Social Work, the California Board of Registered Nursing, and the Society for Human Resource Management. If you plan on receiving continuing education credit for this program or a general certificate, please proceed with the following steps on this slide. First, you must log in individually. Participants who listen in on someone else's line will not receive credit. Second, you must complete and submit the evaluation and post-test, as well as receive a passing grade on the post-test. After today's session, you will be receiving an email with all of this information, and that email will be sent out tomorrow by 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Certificates will then be mailed within 4 to 6 weeks if you meet the qualifications. Also, please note that the planners and presenters for this program have not disclosed any pertinent financial relationships or conflicts of interest, and no commercial support was provided for this program. Now, thanks in part to direct support from Genentech, HSN, and QVC, Cancer and Careers is able to offer this 7th year of the Balancing Work and Cancer webinar series. This program is really created to provide patients and survivors, as well as their care teams and employers, with concise, targeted information around the work-related issues that arise after a cancer diagnosis. Additionally, we'd like to recognize Cancer and Careers year-round sponsors who support all of our core programs and really allow us to continue providing all of our resources and services free of charge to help you understand those issues that are surrounding balancing work and cancer. Now, we often hear from cancer survivors that going through a cancer diagnosis and treatment is a catalyst for looking at themselves and their jobs differently. For some, the work they did before is no longer something that they can or want to do. But at the same time, it's really challenging to know how to take the next step. One very practical thing we can all do is identify the skills that we currently have and think about how to enhance them and strategically present them to employers, as well as figuring out those skills that we want or need to have to pursue our next job. Typically, people, no matter what kind of work that they do, think they have less skills than they actually do. So today, to address and discuss this process is one of our incredible career coaches, Kathy Flora. She'll help you get started thinking about your own inventory of skills and those that you would like to add to it. Kathy is an executive coach who has held senior leadership roles in both the public and private sector. And she's been part of the Cancer and Careers family for a long time, as she was one of our original career coaches and still provides guidance through our interactive coaching site and our other events. In fact, Kathy was the inspiration for our coaching services. So please join me in welcoming Kathy, I'm going to hand it over to get started.
Hi, everybody. It's really, really good to be here. And I have to say that in just the last 13 months since I presented this session in 2020, the entire employment world has turned upside down. And the world is all experiencing, from the pandemic, workplace changes that have accelerated what we thought were going to be changes in the future, but it brought them into our immediate now. And I know that you recognize what I'm talking about. While workers experienced a lot of upheaval during the worst of the crisis, which I have on this slide as then, 11 million people in the US lost jobs, 4.5 million women stopped out of the labor market because they had to care for other people or they had their kids home from school. Workers and companies had to reevaluate the workplace completely, and remote work was commonplace. Boy, now that sounds like something that I could get on board with. And now what's really interesting is you can't walk down the street without seeing a help wanted sign everywhere. In the midst of what we now can call the great reopening, there is beginning to be tremendous opportunity to reinvent how we work, where we work, and what skills we're going to need in order to succeed in this new work environment. In the past year, the past 15 months, nearly everyone has reevaluated their place in the world and what's important to them. In fact, there was a recent Pew Research study that found that those who got displaced, those 11 million people who lost jobs during the pandemic, fully 66% are considering changing occupations, changing careers, not just changing jobs. That's enormous. And that statistic runs all the way through different income levels. So it's not just people who were, in jobs that obviously somebody would want to change. No, everybody was reevaluating. And the significant thing about these people who were reconsidering is 30% of those surveyed were already taking steps to reskill for the future. So what's the bottom line in all of this is that if cancer caused you to rethink your career, and I know that it does, your work environment, you might reconsider, your skills, you might reconsider. Guess what? You're not alone. So in the next hour, we're going to talk about how you can use this once in a lifetime. What started out as a tragedy may end up being an opportunity, and how you can turn it to your advantage. So my hope is that in our time together, you'll end up with some tools and some processes that you can use to help you succeed in the world of work. Now, where are you heading? In the midst of all this upheaval, I'm sure there's several of you who are thinking, I'm in cancer treatment, or I'm in my post-treatment stage, and I really want to get reemployed, but I'm not sure where I want to work. Or maybe I want to volunteer or to do self-employment in something that really matters to me. In my own experience, and I believe for many of you, where you have been career-wise may not be where you choose to go in your future. So I want to ask you to think about what may have changed for you. Here's a couple of questions. Do you need to find more meaningful work? Do you need a job schedule or a flexible job that's different than what you had before? Do you need to make sure that you can balance your treatment with your work? Do you need insurance or financial stability in such a way that it'll help pay for your treatment or pay for your lifestyle? Do you need to volunteer in something that you care about in order to give you a sense of purpose again? Or has something been really nagging at you? You have to follow your passion rather than your past work history. All these reasons for wanting to reevaluate your career make a lot of sense, because it feels like cancer changes everything, doesn't it? Even your career goals. But in reality, cancer changes some things, but it doesn't rob you of your skills. It may challenge you for a bit, but there are many of your skills that you may have even strengthened during the course of your illness. So what we're going to look at is what the gap is. What kinds of skills do you need in order to make a career change that you might want to do or find reemployment after your treatment? And bottom line, the question is, how do you go from here to there, from past to future, and paint the best vision for yourself? The answer is pretty simple, but it's not easy. The answer is to know yourself. Figure out what your vision is. Understand what skills you bring to the table that make you marketable. And then you have to put a plan in place and develop that plan and execute that plan. So in the next couple of minutes, we're going to start on this path to discovery. We're going to figure out your short and long-term goals, how to define your skills, make sure that you have the resources so that after this webinar, you can use this process to develop a personal action plan that'll help you achieve the future that you envision. So I'm going to ask you to think about, do you have a new goal? What is that goal? Is it a long or short-term goal? Make sure that you consider your circumstances and your recovery stage and your new normal. I remember back when I was in treatment and I really did want to keep working the whole way through, but circumstances were such that I could not because I lost my job during my treatment. Well, many of us lost our jobs this past year, so you may be in that situation too. It's important for you to craft your next goal, taking into account your own particular circumstances and not let expectations that you had for yourself before or anybody else's expectations of you or any assumptions that you make of yourself, like I should be farther along or I should be able to do everything I used to do. Don't let all that get in the way of your planning for a new vision for yourself. Your goals might be way, way out there, or they might be super focused. You've got to give yourself time to think about these things. Do you want to advance in your current role? Do you want to go back to a similar job or a similar field? Do you want to find a different job in the same field? Do you want to just chuck it all and try something completely different? Or do the same type of role, but you need a different environment or a different schedule or an entirely different group of people that you want to work with? This is your chance to define that vision and make sure that it speaks to you, it meets your needs, and that it feels like it's worth fighting for. In other words, what is it that motivates you? What do you do like breathing? What do you do that you love so much that you could easily get in the flow when you do it? I know during the pandemic, I discovered something about myself that puts me into the flow so that I don't even know what time it is. Unfortunately, you can't make a living at it because it's painting, but it is an awesome thing when you feel that flow. If there's anything, any skill that you've got that's in your life right now that you can use in the work world and it gives you that flow experience, don't let that go. Think about, what did you want to be when you were a little kid? What do you see others do? And when you see that, you think, that's what I want to do for myself. I know I could do that. Or what do others always go to you for? Because you're so good at it. And they want to make sure that you're involved in that particular thing. And also think about what skills that you've developed that have built a reputation in your field that you want to take with you into the future. The answers to these kind of questions are really valuable cues to what you choose to do next. But what if you don't know what you want to do next? What if you're not sure what you want to try? What if you don't know where you best fit? In this case, and that's what this webinar is all about, you start with your skills. You start with those skills and then you align them to roles that fit those skills. And if you're seeking something entirely new, you want to make sure that those motivated skills that you've built up over the course of your career, those things that get you jazzed up just doing them, are the ones that you can fit into your new role. So you want to match those that you've already developed and what is needed in your potential new role, and maybe then close any skill gaps that you have with training or experiential learning through volunteer roles or by testing the waters in a lower level role and work towards your ultimate goal over time. But always, no matter what, it's important to start with your professional skill set. I want to talk to you about that for a minute, okay? The skill set is going to be the bedrock foundation for figuring out and then achieving your vision. Your future success requires continuous improvement within that skill set, strengthening in those existing skills, and actually learning new ones as they become important in your chosen field and as they seem to be driving forward into the future for almost everybody in the work world. So what does your professional skill set include? Starts with soft skills. So that's obviously thinking skills, people skills, those personal qualities that you have. Whether or not you have emotional intelligence, you know how to interact with other people. You know how to build relationships. You know how to handle conflict without falling apart. You know how to speak up. You know how to interact. Bottom line, your soft skills matter, and they matter a lot. And then the hard skills, these are basic things like reading, speaking, writing, mathematics, listening to other people, and specific skills that depend on your profession, such as mobile application development or customer service or overseeing and understanding budgets or creating graphics. Those very specific things are also foundational skills. These foundational skills are transferable. Motivated skills are those from that list that give you the greatest satisfaction and joy. So knowing and being able to articulate your professional skill set is going to be critical to your success. It also will give you the opportunity to understand what kinds of information you want to share with new employers, both on your resumes and in your interviews. So don't shortchange yourself. Take some time and figure out what your professional skill set is. So we're going to talk about what's your personal best fit. And you each got, or you can see in the chat that there's a handout for you. And this handout is something that we created so that you could start thinking about in a very simple way what your transferable skills are. And the first couple of pages are what I call foundational skills. And they're the top 17 skills that career professionals like myself believe are going to be critical in the 21st century. Now, many experts are calling them the skills of the fourth industrial revolution. Well, you know, there are even some more that are actually, I think, being added. They are soft skills, obviously, and the hard skills, basic foundational skills, and they're required for most jobs. But they're not necessarily the specific professional job skills that you need. So we're going to get to that next. But basically first, when you get to inventory yourself, check off in the first 2 pages of this handout the skills that you feel like you can claim, particularly those that you feel are your core strengths. Don't worry if you've not done them in a while, because many of us have put some of our work life on hold for a little while. But just go with what you know. And then on the 3rd page of this handout, you're going to see a place where you can list the jobs or the skills that you've had on your particular jobs. And what I'd like for you to do is list for yourself at least 5 key skills that you use frequently on the job. Stay away from those that you don't like and think only of those skills that you're motivated to repeat. Ask yourself these questions and then complete this page when we're done with this webinar. The questions are, what are your job-related strengths? In what areas do you excel? What skills or knowledge bring you the most recognition? What professional skills and knowledge areas bring you the most satisfaction? And what do you do that makes you the most proud? In my experience, if you complete these first 3 pages, it's going to give you an amazing sense of accomplishment. It's going to remind you of how capable you have been and how competent you will be in your next roles. So I really want you to take time later to do this portion of the handout. Like I said before, don't shortchange yourself. Go over your old resumes. Go over your old performance reviews. Go over project plans or things that you've got involved in before. They'll help nudge you to remind you of your strengths. And once you've completed this, you've got a really good start on prepping for success. So that's the first part of your handout. And then I also want to show you a couple of other things that I think are important because they are some online tools that are going to help you narrow down some specifics. So let me put another slide up here. All right. These are online tools that are available and prepared by the federal government. They're free and they can help you explore your skills even deeper. So I'm going to take you on a quick tour of 3 of them. And I don't want to go out to the exact sites right now because we don't have time. So I took screenshots, but I want you to know that in the handout that you've downloaded from the chat, you can actually see that the URLs for these three are listed on, I think it's page 5. So you're going to have an opportunity to go out and use these yourself later. And the first of those is an online skills assessment from Career One Stop site. And Career One Stop is a federal government site. It is something that is used at all the unemployment offices. They actually call them Career One Stop sources now, or Career Source One Stop. And this is called a skills match assessment. And it's simple. There's only 40 questions, takes you a couple of minutes, and all you do is you include the level of skill that you think that you have for the particular skills that are listed. Once you complete the 40 questions, the system produces a list of the top professions that match your skills. Now, what's kind of interesting is it also ranks these by best fit. Now, what you see here is the results of my own assessment with the top skills, the top 150, if you keep scrolling down, that match the skills that I listed. Now, my top choices, if you look here for Outlook, mine are just average Outlook and some are below average Outlook, but that's okay because I know what I've been doing my whole life and I'll probably keep doing it. But there's quite a variety if I wanted to branch out. I mean, if you can see this, there's a lot of different job titles listed. So for you, this is a good place to start. If you know what you're good at, but you don't know where it matches the roles that one can play in the workforce. So next, what if I wanted to see the career paths that were related to the skills I used in my prior job? Well, that last link came from the Career One Stop Center site. And within that, there's something called Exploring Options. And you can go to this portion of the Career One Stop site and look up Exploring Options to see what other tools are available to you. So I did that. And one of the first things that I did was explore a career. And I typed the name of look at the screenshot on the left-hand side here. I typed Information Technology Project Manager in there as a potential career that I wanted to see what else matched. And what it does is it'll then give you other matches for the career title that you entered. It will give you the target wage. It'll give you typical education required. It'll give you links to job listings for that role and businesses that might hire such workers. And it also gives you the outlook. Now, if you look just above this little arrow at the bottom, there's yellow words that say bright outlook. That means, wow, in this particular job that's listed 1 to 3rd, that one has a bright outlook for the future. I'm sure these have been updated, and they're updated on a regular basis because the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is part of the Department of Labor from our federal government, is constantly updating these tools. So this is a great place for you to see how your job might relate to other roles and what the potential might be for other roles within that. Now, on the right-hand side, I use the same tool, but I wanted to explore what kind of training would be available for certain jobs in a particular zip code. So I listed a job title. And in this case, if I look at it, I almost can't see it, but first line supervisors for non-retail sales workers. I thought I'll check that out. And I wanted to know what was available within the zip code that I listed here. I think it's 48023, which is somewhere in Lansing, Michigan. And what happened is then it popped, or 48823, I guess. It popped up a list of potential training opportunities. And I can see that I can get a certificate program for that particular role if I wanted to click on that second arrow. And it tells me that I can get that certificate at Lansing Community College, which is actually down the road from where I used to live. So it also tells you the amount of time it takes, etc. So you can see how this is a really important tool to use if you need to replace a particular skill, update a skill, or you have a job that you want to try for that's related to an old job that you had. but you might have a skill gap or two and you need to close that gap. Now there's one more source I want to show you really quickly. And I just love this one. And it has a really silly name. It's called ONET Online. I have absolutely no idea why they named it that, but this is a federal government site that contains so much skill and job information that when you get to the point of planning, you're going to want to dig into this one. Use their advanced search feature, and you can dig into occupations that use your skills. You can determine what the demand is. You can see what the role requires. You can see where to get training. You can see what the salary range is for your locale. And you can even link to job postings. So it's super worth your time to noodle around in this site to begin to build towards your plan of aligning your skills to your vision. So there's 3 things for you to check out. You want to check out the one-stop, the Career OneSource. You want to check out exploring your options, and you want to check out some deep skills research as you're building your skill profile. All these resources are listed in the section of your handout, so you can access them once the webinar is over. All right, let's see if you can find out what skills are in the most demand. So when I ran this webinar last time, which was in 2020, I had done some research and I have updated it. But the 2020 survey is also listed here. Upwork, which is a recruiting company, listed those jobs that were most in demand in their recruiting site. Now, the world has made a dramatic evolution to the digital since this 2019 survey. So I can imagine that those things that are data cybersecurity, mobile application development, digital marketing, those are going to be bigger on this word cloud in 2021. But it won't just be the tech dominant skills that are in demand. Now, I don't know if you've noticed when you go walking down the street, and I mentioned this before, you cannot go past a building without a help wanted sign on the door. In fact, gas stations in my town are giving signing bonuses to people of $500 if they'll just apply. And I have family members who run restaurants who are really hurting because they can't get enough staff to be both line cooks or chefs or service professionals within their restaurants. So at all levels, there is a real demand and a lack of the talent that people need. We are seeing for the very first time, probably the hottest job market that I have seen in my lifetime. There's a competition for truckers. There's a competition for logistics folks. Oh my goodness, we all know this because we order everything online, and there's a inflation happening because some of the supply chains are stalled. Also just want to point out to you that there was a recent Forbes magazine article that listed 8 job skills to succeed in a post-coronavirus world. Whew. I hope we're in a post-coronavirus world soon. But they did a survey again of companies, and Forbes is a pretty reputable organization. So I put some strength into what they said. The top skill was adaptability and flexibility. My goodness, if you survived cancer treatment and working, you have adaptability and flexibility. Tech savviness was second. Creativity and innovation was third. Then data literacy, critical thinking, digital and coding skills, leadership, emotional intelligence, and a commitment to lifelong learning. To those, I'm going to add a couple more just from my own personal experience. You have to be able to work in a digital platform or two. You have to be able to work in Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever it is that the company uses for their conferencing with each other, because chances are you may have an opportunity to do some remote work. I know people who actually during the pandemic have been interviewed. They sourced a job, they got interviewed for the job, they started work, they trained for the job, and they're doing the job, and they have yet to meet in person the person that they actually directly report to. Everything is done online. And I've known people who have been hired and trained that way, but now they're out on the road doing their work, and they only meet with their team once or twice a week in an office setting. So you have to be able to work with the digital platforms. And one more thing, you have to have the ability to balance your work and your personal life. I know cancer treatment has forced you into some of that, but we have all found that working at all is pretty demanding, and we have to make sure that we don't give up some of the gains in our personal life that we may have achieved during the time of lockdown. Sounds funny, but it really is true. I know I valued some of my quiet time. So for work, I wouldn't want to give all that up. The other thing to keep in mind too is that there's been studies showing that people who work remotely work an average of at least 5 hours longer during the week than others, on an average of 45 hours a week. So you want to make sure that you keep a handle on that. So you want to figure out what you bring to the table, what you need to work on to develop in terms of skills to be ready to succeed in this world, because this world is a different world than the one that we left before the pandemic. And it's a different world than you might have anticipated when you got your cancer diagnosis. Guilty working of 5 hours, you bet. Okay, so what do? How do you figure it out? You do a personal SWOT analysis. That's how you bridge the skills gap. And in your action plan on page 4, there's a place for you to do your SWOT. I don't want you to do it right now, but I just want to point that section out to you so you can work on completing it later. When you have time to do your skills research, you get into all those sites, and then you put your plan in place. Doing your personal SWOT analysis is a little different. If you've ever been in a situation where you did a business strategic plan, then you know that a business SWOT is where you look for your business's strengths, which is the S. What's the weaknesses, which is the W. What the opportunities are that you face in the marketplace, and what are threats in the marketplace in order to do a business plan for the future and do your budgeting and everything else. But when you're doing a personal SWOT analysis, that's a little bit different. You want to start with S, which is your motivated skills or your strengths, and those skills that you love using, okay? These you get from page 3 and page 1 and 2 in your handout. Then your W isn't your weaknesses, it's your workarounds. Some of you may need some temporary workarounds when you're planning for your future. You might have to get some training, and you don't want to drive very far for it. Maybe you need a job where you can work at your own pace or where you can work from home. Maybe you have to choose job targets that allow you to work part-time, and that's a workaround. You need a different schedule. Or you need to find positions that don't require you to stand a whole lot. Any of those workarounds are important for you to think about, to ask your medical team about if need be, and to take into account when you're doing your SWOT. And then the third is not so much your business opportunities, but your options for growth. That refers to your skill gaps. So you might have a target and you might have a whole set of skills, but there's 1 or 2 things that you really have to improve upon. Or maybe you forget a little bit about it, so you have to brush up on it. Like I forget how to do certain things in Excel now because I haven't done budgeting in a long time. And if I had to take a job where I had to use Excel, I'd have to go back and maybe take a tutorial. Or maybe there's something you have to learn from scratch, like I'm learning painting from scratch. I'm getting better at it. I'm not quite good at it yet, but I'm taking the time to learn it. So those are options for growth where you see a gap. And then what's the T in SWOT for your personal analysis? That is what it is that delineates for yourself what your training options are. And that means within your circumstances, within your own finances, and within your own timeline, how are you going to gain those skills? So that's a simple format for the SWOT. And you can find information for this if you do the first 3 segments of the handout and then get to the SWOT section on page 4. Now, before we conclude and do some questions and answers, I want to talk about some resources that are available for closing those skill gaps for training that are super reasonable. And the first one is that I want you to remember that you never stop learning. And I want to tell you that Cancer and Careers does have some professional development micro grants available. And those are available from time to time. And if you haven't heard about them before, I think what I would recommend is you subscribe to our newsletter to learn about them for the next round of the application process. But, you know, this learning doesn't have to be through colleges and universities. It can be accomplished through experience too, like where you volunteer your time, or maybe you secure an internship. It doesn't have to be necessarily paid. It could be that you get yourself involved with an organization and build contacts and experience in the process. Constantly be learning, because learning is going to be your friend no matter what your situation. Now, there's one more super exciting thing that I have to share with you, because this is the coolest thing that I have ever found out about. And you may know about them already. They're called MOOCs. That is the weirdest name, but it's Massive Open Online Courses. And this has just exploded in 2020 and 2021. Massive Open Online Courses. Some of them are hosted by the greatest universities in the world. MIT, Stanford, Cambridge, they're unbelievable. Some are hosted by independent learning organizations. Some are hosted by digital platforms like Google or LinkedIn, Lynda by LinkedIn, Google Garage, Digital Garage. Those are amazing. edX, Coursera, master courses. They are amazing. They're open to anybody, usually not with prereqs, unless, you know, it's something very specific, like some sort of software that you have to have a basic for first. All offer quality knowledge sharing, free or at a reasonable cost. You can take them at your own pace, one course at a time. You can earn a certificate, you can earn a degree, or you can get micro certificates in a very specific thing. Now, at the end of your handout, there's a list of the top 17 most popular free and reasonably priced MOOCs that we researched. And I actually clicked on them all, made sure they were all still there, got rid of some of the old ones and put some new ones in there. So it's really exciting for you to explore. And when it comes time to learning or try to brush up on something, you can take a course in Python programming. You can get a certificate as a Microsoft certified professional. You can get a cybersecurity certificate. You can go learn digital marketing. You can learn HR. I mean, I heard that SHRM was, SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, was one of our sponsors. They have a number of courses that are available to you. And I can tell you what, they are not all expensive. They're usually extremely reasonable. There's a group called Udemy, U-D-E-M-Y, on the second page of your list. That one, I've noticed most of the courses are between $9 and $11. And a lot of times a pro who is somebody who just wants to teach other people, but they do a particular skill for a living, they are the ones who are offering the courses. My painting class is offered by a professional artist who has a studio in St. Pete, Florida. And I have subscribed for $29 a month. And I am getting so much out of it. I can access it 24/7 and learn to my heart's content. I encourage you to do the same thing with any of the skills that you're interested in brushing up on. So look on page 5 and 6, explore them at your leisure. And because I think this is the most exciting thing that I'm sharing with you today, I want you to know that you don't have to be at a loss for how you're going to learn what you need to learn, because you have MOOCs at your fingertips. Have at it. You really can't lose. So what's your action plan for success? You've got a plan. You've got to put the plan in place. You know the process now. Look at your skills, your motivated skills, your hard skills, your professional skills. Do a SWOT analysis, do the research, then apply all of this. And all you have to supply really outside of that process is your motivation to create your own future. If you follow these simple steps, you're going to find yourself being able to move step by step from that vision into that shining new reality. And guess what? There's lots of people going along that path with you. 66% of the people who lost their jobs during the market, during the downturn through the pandemic, are also doing some searching, some soul searching. But guess what? Of those 66%, there is an enormous need and demand for workers. So you're not going to bump up against too much that's going to block you in this job search. But take your time. Don't expect to do it all at once. Career change and reemployment takes time. And there are elements of this process that you can learn from the other webinars that are going to be coming up. So make sure you take advantage of those other webinars through Cancer and Careers, and also the online resources that are available. This process, this skills assessment, I think is one of the best parts of looking for a job, because it helps to build your confidence back, and it gives you an opportunity to see who you are and what you have to offer somebody else. So take your time, dream, research, talk to people, gather information, brainstorm, figure out ways around your perceived and real obstacles, because there are some. Then one step at a time, you will get there. Celebrate your ability to handle the changes that your life has thrown at you. You had double. You had cancer, you had your own treatment experience, and now you're getting into the great reopening. And so I believe with all my heart that the world today needs the contributions you're going to make. And I can't wait to see what comes of all that you have imagined for yourself. I want to thank you for paying attention today. I see that we've got some questions in the Q&A. I'm going to turn that back over to Nicole, and we'll see where we go from here. All right. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathy. That was really great. I know that you've really introduced so many things and ways to get everyone thinking about how to really identify and enhance our existing skills, and definitely some pretty simple action items and steps to take. Again, I just want to point out that Sissy has put in the link to the handout in the chat box if any of you are looking for that now. Before we move on to the Q&A, I do want to point out that we also have a number of Balancing Work and Cancer webinars coming up throughout the remainder of the year. We do have a new one coming up in September. If someone could just move to the next slide for me.
You bet.
Thank you.
Oh, I cannot move anymore to the next slide.
Oh, 1 second.
Maybe Rachel can do it.
Well, just to break it down, next month we have our session on career change, which is a really great follow-up to this. Here we go.
There we go.
We have a new session taking place in September that should be Balancing Work and Cancer, not CAN. And then we have some updated health insurance options and communicating effectively and newly diagnosed. So all of those have registration that is currently open. So if you would like to register for those, please do so. We'd love to have you. And additionally, here are just some job search resources that can be helpful. We offer our free resume review service. As I mentioned earlier, our Ask a Career Coach message board, which Kathy is very involved in. And then some of our publications and articles can be really helpful as you start to figure out what your next steps are and how you want to get prepared for a job search. I'm going to leave the CEU requirements up here while we move on to the Q&A portion. I do see that there are a couple of questions in the Q&A. So Kathy, if it's all right with you, I'll just start moving through some of those and pose them to you.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
So Hannah asks, what do you mean by motivated skills?
Good question, Hannah, and thanks for asking it. Motivated skills are those things that you know you can do, that you have developed the ability to execute them in the workplace, and you like them. And the like them is really important. You enjoy them, you find that you can do them with ease, you do them like breathing. People turn to you to do them for them because you're good at it, and it brings you joy, or at least a sense of satisfaction. I know, let me give you a personal example. I know that I can slog through a spreadsheet, but I do not like it. I don't like numbers. So my motivated skills are writing and reading and interpreting and influencing people and public speaking. If it came down to me having to work on budgets and numbers all day long, I would not be motivated. The other things motivate me. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. This one comes from Sylvia. I'm still concerned about returning to work and want to look for remote work only. I've never worked remotely before, but I have been helping my kids through their online classes while they were at home. Is that something that you think I can put on my resume as a skill?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that all of us are experiencing is that most of us hadn't worked remotely before,
right?
But people were figuring it out as we go. And that's why, you know, somebody makes a t-shirt that says you're on mute on one of the commercials that you may have seen, because we're learning these strategies as we go. And you had to learn a lot helping your kids with online learning. And so, yeah, you can say you were an online learning coach to your children. I mean, companies are becoming more and more child friendly now too. One of the things that I got that I think is so cool, just before this webinar, I got an email from flexjobs.com. And that's one of the resources that we have on Cancer and Careers. And it's actually on the slide that's just before the CEU requirements. They just published a list of the top companies that are hiring remotely. And so I think it's a neat thing for you to go and look at their blog, and you can get through this discount code cancer, you can actually become a member of FlexJobs and see the opportunities there. But their blog is free, and you can go and you can see who are the companies that hire most remotely, and just see what sorts of opportunities there are working remotely. And I can understand why you need and want to do that. Many, many people have found that it works for their lifestyle, and it works for not only parents, but people who don't want to commute a long distance, or people who live somewhere different than where the opportunity is. I know there are several people on the Cancer and Careers team who don't live in New York City. And I know that when I ran a division for the federal government that taught leadership training, I had staff members that worked from DC area and from Hawaii and from Denver, and I lived in Florida, and my whole team was remote. So it's becoming more and more common. And I think you're going to find that there are more opportunities than you ever could have imagined prior to the pandemic. Okay, what's next?
Absolutely. And I just want to also add, you know, a lot of those skills of just, I think a lot of people who have taken time off for maybe parenting and whatnot, you know, those are transferable skills. You're scheduling, you're managing, you are coordinating, and those are all things that, you know, you can work into kind of selling yourself and your skills a little bit more. Okay, this question comes from Tracy. How would you deal with the resume gaps? Our company was downsized and I took care of parents with Alzheimer's. I'm now a breast cancer patient.
Okay. Today, it's different than what it would have been in February of 2019 or 2020, I guess that would be.
Yeah.
Our gap, everybody's got a gap. People are going to ask less about the gap now than they would have asked about the gap prior to the pandemic. What I would do is I would go ahead and I would use a standard resume with dates. You don't, by the way, have to put months, you just put years. But some of the software, the resume software does require you, hiring software requires you to put some actual dates in. Fine. Then have your story. Have your story. My company went through some downsizing. I was lucky in that I was able to spend time caring for both of my parents who had Alzheimer's. I gained some things from that: perspective, the ability to flex, the ability to put things in perspective. I can multitask. Those are the kinds of things that I think are going to be useful in your company. So you take what you gained from it and you tell your story, and then you stop. And I know, Nicole, you probably have a different perspective than I have, but we all have a kind of nuances of this one. And that is, you don't necessarily have to disclose the fact that you're a cancer patient in your interview process. I never advise it, but some people think there might be one reason or another to go ahead and disclose. I think only when you have a job offer and you need any kind of special accommodations would I then possibly disclose to somebody that would need to give me those accommodations, because you're not being hired for your cancer, you're being hired for your skills. And as long as you can perform the job, that is the way that I approach it. Now, you'll find that there are others who may offer a little bit different nuance. When you have those kinds of questions about gaps, do what we call the swivel. And that's what I was just describing to you. You say, okay, yes, I had this gap. Now here are the things that I did during that gap. And this is what I bring to the table for you. You acknowledge and then you pivot. You acknowledge and then you swivel.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to piggyback off of that, you know, we hear from people a lot asking about if they should disclose, especially when they are dealing with a resume gap. And again, it's a personal decision. I echo what Kathy said in terms of just being, you know, really mindful of it. Is it really necessary? How does it really apply to the specific job in question? You know, and to avoid try to avoid feeling like you're lying if you don't share that information. No one shares everything with an employer or a potential employer. So just keeping in mind what's practical and realistic, and understanding a little bit around some of the workplace protections and things like that is helpful, which you can find information about that on our website. And I do want to just quickly go back to the FlexJobs conversation and just point out that you actually can look at the jobs for free. You just can't apply to them until you're a member. So we encourage people to just take a look and see if there's anything that appeals to them, and then, you know, go through the process of becoming a member if they are finding things that they're interested in.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know that piece of information. Thanks.
Yeah, it's nice because, you know, you don't want to pay for the membership and find that there's nothing that you really want.
Exactly.
This is a question from Nancy. What are the top 3 skills that you think are worth developing in order to be a savvy job candidate across most industries? Or are there general ones that are more appealing?
Yeah, and they're soft skills. Number 1, your ability to communicate. That includes your ability to listen and your ability to communicate who you are, your ability to interview well, which means practice. Make sure you have your stories down. Use the STAR approach or the PAR approach. What problems did you face? What actions did you take? And what was the result of your actions? That's critically important. And your ability to do all those things in such a way that you can communicate them through the screen. because chances are that's how your job search is going to go. It's going to be on phone and through the screen. You may not ever meet the people that you work for until after you get hired. Mm-hmm. So those are top 3 skills for job search. Now, you might have been asking, what are the top 3 skills that have to do with profession? And that depends on what field you're in, okay? If you're in medicine, you're going to have different skills than if you're in graphic design. But it's important for you to research your own field and understand how it's changing. And one of the things, like for me, being in the HR arena, I needed to learn things about the whole digital job search thing. Mm-hmm. I needed to learn what the latest employment laws are. Those kinds of things, keeping up to date with your profession is critical. So it can be different for each person, but all of us need to be able to communicate, to listen well, to succinctly get across our point. And, maybe one more, I'll just give you another one, is dealing with conflict without falling apart. Understanding your own hot buttons and being able to manage your emotions. Emotional intelligence is super, super important, especially because people are kind of swimming in stress right now. And you just never know what's going to be a trigger for somebody. So you have to be able to assess that and approach things with positive communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually held a webinar on setting boundaries that can be really helpful. I know a lot of people struggle with setting boundaries, and that can also be a good way to problem solve and to avoid conflict as well. So that's on our website if anyone's interested in checking out that recording.
Oh, that sounds like a good one.
It is a good one. I learned a lot from it as well. Here's another question. This one comes from Jamie. Am I able to put participation in non-certified MOOCs on my resume? A lot of the free ones don't offer certification, and I don't have a job right now, so I'm not in a place where I could afford the certified courses. Are those acceptable?
Absolutely, they're acceptable. If you've gained a skill from it, put it down, okay? You don't have to pay for knowledge anymore. Go on to Google Digital Garage. Most of those are free. Linda from LinkedIn, most of those are free. It's amazing what is free. So yes, if you've gained a skill from it and you feel like you have that capacity, then list it as part of your education. When you go and apply to jobs, there's usually a section for education. And then there's a section for other things. Your section for education, frequently, they're going to ask you things like, what high school did you go to? Did you go to college? Do you have any certificates? Blah, blah, blah. I always then list the other pieces and the dates that like if it was say it was a Python programming class. Well, I have never taken that, by the way, nor will I. But if I did, I would list that and then the date that I completed it. And I might list the place where I got it, which might have been Google Digital Garage, okay? So that you can claim what you know. It's important to claim what you know. And you know what? A lot of the jobs that are coming up today don't require you to have 4 years of college plus. They require you to have a set of skills, especially some of the technical ones. So feel free to both explore those, take those, and claim those.
Yeah, it certainly seems like on a lot of job descriptions and job board ads, it talks about, these are the preferred, experience, but if you have alternative experience, you can expand on that. And I think that that's something that shows that, there's not a traditional path that people are taking. And so companies might be a little bit more open to alternative experience than we might originally assume.
Never read a job description as that is all that's required. Read it as that's their ideal. If somebody fell from the sky with everything they wanted, that's what that person would be. If you have some of those things and you think you can sell yourself, apply anyway. You never know. You might be just exactly what they're looking for.
Absolutely, because personality can certainly play a role in it as well.
And fit.
So we are at the top of the hour. So if we didn't get to your questions today, please shoot us an email. We'll be happy to get to those. If you wouldn't mind, Kathy, would you mind just repeating the 3 most important soft skills that you had mentioned before?
Okay, I'm going to put them in a different order, but I can tell you what they are.
Okay.
Emotional intelligence, the ability to handle conflict in an appropriate and positive manner, the ability to communicate, and that is the ability to listen well, and the ability to articulate your thoughts in a clear and concise manner so that you can both influence, lead, and have everybody understand.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much.
You bet.
So, okay, for the sake of getting everybody out on time for the most part, we're going to end here. As I mentioned, if we didn't get to your question today, please shoot us an email at cancerandcareers@cuw.org, and we'll be sure to either answer it ourselves or get an answer from Kathy. As I mentioned, we will be emailing the online evaluation tomorrow before 5 p.m. So if you wouldn't mind taking the time to fill that out, it really helps us develop these programs and also allows us to continue to receive the funding to have these kinds of programs for free. Thank you again, Kathy, for your absolutely valuable insights and for always being such a great contributor to Cancer and Careers. And thank you all for attending today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, Kathy.